No problem.
David, why don't you read your the poem that you brought or piece of literature, and then
Okay, thank you,
we'll get
Marty.
started.
The quotation that I'm offering today is something that I wrote when I was writing the biography of Clyde Tombaugh, the man who discovered the planet Pluto in February of 1930. Eventually, as a result of that major accomplishment that he made, he was fired from Lowell Observatory about 15 years later. And I'm writing about the depression that he felt, and he never really got over it, having to leave the observatory. But the feeling that I'm composing here is not about him, but about the telescope that he used in the discovery. And it says the telescope Clyde Tombaugh was finally about to leave stayed at Lowell, its long career not nearly over. Years later, director Arthur Hoag claimed that with as many prospects, the 13-inch had become one of the world's most productive telescopes. If it had consciousness, it might have wondered about what would happen without the man it had shared a life with. A man who had never quite given up searching one more pair of photographic plates for hidden treasure. A man who called himself a traveler, going over the next hill with an eternal hope. Thank you very much. Back to you, Marty.
Okay, thank you, David. David, what I wanted to say, there was a big upheaval at the Lowell Observatory for those who may be interested back then, because Douglas, who was also there, and he goes on to develop the tree ring lab at U of A. And there were there was one other and because Lowell started a project based on his what he believed were canals on Mars.
Okay.
Okay, and there was a lot of controversy with that during that history for that observatory, but they still have a long track record of great discoveries there. Anyway, I want to read our opening prayer. We'll see how far we get. We will eventually be getting into the story of Balaam, and is it Rabbi? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Well, in Hebrew, it's Bil'am, but
Right.
usually, and some people say Balaam, but
Okay. It
whatever,
doesn't matter.
whatever.
Okay, so however you pronounce it when you're reading it, that'll be fine then. Okay. So we'll see how far we get, but the story has a lot of meaning to it, a lot of history that stem from this story, and we will take the next several weeks to go through the story because it's that important. I'll read our opening prayer. I'll read it in English today. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. You have sanctified us through your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves in things of Torah. Amen.
Amen.
Could I ask for a chapter and verse? And
Yes, we
apologize.
are on
It's been
Numbers
a while.
21,
I'm sorry, 21?
Numbers 21, verse 1.
21:1.
Okay, so uh, uh, I don't, David, do you have it in front of you right now?
Yes,
If
I
not,
do.
okay, go ahead.
And the Canaanite, the king of Arad, who dwelt in the south, heard tell that Israel came by the way of Atharim. And he fought against Israel and took some of them captive. And Israel vowed a vow unto the Lord and said, if thou wilt indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Israel and delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities. And the name of the place was called Hormah. And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way to the Red Sea to compass the land of Edom. And the soul of the people became impatient because of the way. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. Wherefore have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, there is no water, and our soul loatheth this light bread. And the Lord said, sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people. And much of the people of Israel died because these serpents were poisonous. And the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned because we have spoken against the Lord and against thee. Pray unto the Lord that he will take away the serpents from us. And Moses prayed for the people. And the Lord said unto Moses, make thee a fiery serpent and set it upon a pole. And it shall come to pass that every one that is bitten, when he seeth it, shall live. And Moses made a serpent of brass and set it upon the pole. And it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he looked unto the serpent of brass, he lived. And the children of Israel journeyed and pitched in Oboth.
Okay, let's stop at this point, David.
Thank you.
Okay, so we did read this part last week. I mean 2 weeks ago, but it's worthwhile going over it. 2 weeks ago we had some of the discussion about the bronze or brass serpent on a plaque, whether it's in some translations that it's on Moses on a staff, some on a pole, but and we had a discussion about, well, isn't this a potential form of idolatry? And we also had a discussion about how the symbol of a serpent on a staff was taken by the medical society in the United States as representing medicine. So we had that discussion too. I'm trying to refresh everyone's memory with that first. But there's something to be said here. And I know some of you had some things to say, and Michael had some things to say about his program, what's going on in Israel, and things like that. And when David was reading, I'm going to ask the question, did anything ring a bell about what has happened in the past year and a half?
Yeah, I think it reminds us of the war that we are kind of hopefully nearing the end of. And please God that this ceasefire is going to work. And we're really, really hoping and praying that it does. But this section of Numbers reminds me, and should remind all of us, of the war that has just happened. And the other thing happens to be the idea of the idolatry of they're not asked to worship the snake, but they're just asked to look at it, and then their their snake bites will be healed, and then they'll live happily ever after. And also, God is not going to command his people to build idols. So this is not an idol, it's just a symbol. And I love your idea about the caduceus. I really love that.
So, it's just something, this is the origin of that symbol.
Marty,
Yes, Rabbi.
Marty, again, I wasn't with you 2 weeks ago, but at that time, did anyone comment on the fact that now this occurrence happens immediately after the mourning period for Aaron?
Yes,
Okay, so
yes,
people
we
did
had,
comment on the
yes,
connection on whether whether this was somehow, Aaron's influence is or is not no longer on, on the people,
We did
et
not
cetera, et
discuss
cetera.
that part. We did not
Okay.
discuss that part, but
Mhm.
there is a lot written on that. Yes. Do you want to expand on that, Rabbi?
Well, no, I just, Aaron is such a complicated figure in the Torah, and then in the continuation of the literature. And he's the one. Ultimately, he's the one who has the reputation of being the peacemaker. And to go immediately from the shloshim, from the memorial period of his death, into a period of great, battle, and even with God's permission, seems somewhat problematic.
Well, the way you worded that, you want comments from all of us.
Like I said, I didn't know, and I'm trying to see if there's indeed another link in to the present situation that you do want to have a discussion about. So,
Okay. David, are you thinking about something?
Yeah, thinking, but I do not have anything to say. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Uh,
Well,
um,
yes,
Marty, may I comment? Can you hear me?
sure. Yes, Ken.
Okay. Um, I had mentioned 2 weeks ago in this particular passage uh, that I found that uh, putting the head of a serpent on a staff was problematic for me. And I appreciate what David said about it. Well, it's just a symbol. As I read it, it had magical properties, at least portending to have magical properties. If those who were bitten looked upon it, they would then not die. They would be saved. And that's more than just a symbol. And what's interesting is, and I hadn't thought about it until Rabbi Norm just mentioned it, about following the death of Aaron. It was Aaron, while Moses had ascended Mount Sinai uh, at the behest of the Israelites. He crafted a golden calf
Mhm.
to worship. And God was just outraged. Now clearly God would have seen it happening and knew it was going to happen as it happened, but it happened. And so now he passes, and then there's another um, inanimate object which is brought before the people. And I can't help but wonder, at that time, just as sacrifices were the norm among many peoples, to curry favor with their divine entity, if in fact the having something that they can look at and focus on as being somehow imbued with some higher power wasn't more of um, a norm of the time as opposed to an exception. So, but I still find it problematic with Judaism as I understand it. That's it.
Marty, I still have a problem with the second sentence.
Go ahead.
If you deliver, where is it? If you deliver this people out of our hand, it sounds like they're playing let's make a deal with God. If you do this, we'll do that.
You're making a vow.
I don't
Yes.
quite, I can't wrap my head around that one. And I think, like Ken was just saying, people, I don't, like committing sin, that they were questioning God, they were upset, they were angry, were tired of this manna, that when you look at what you're doing wrong, as in looking at the serpent, then maybe you can learn to do what's right. I don't know. That's That's just the way I see it, because I don't get that snake thing either. Why would they choose a snake except that they were complaining and grumbling the whole time, which they were doing wrong. And maybe if they had looked at what they were doing, God would have been a little bit more merciful towards them. That's all. That's how I see it.
Okay. Any other comments before we start with some other discussion? Marsha?
Well,
Oh, go
well,
ahead. Go ahead, Rabbi.
okay, so let's go into and try to make the parallel here. Okay. This is not a situation where and what's the term they use of colonization. Okay. This is not the Israelites saying, aha, here's some territory that we can conquer. This is a response. The king of Arad attacked them,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically, as I said before, specifically right after the death of Aaron, which is right after the death of Miriam. So the people are depressed. They're in a low time. They're disoriented, and whatever. And the king of Arad had heard all this and felt that it was a good time to attack. And so the people say to God, "Are you with us? Or are you deserting us? And if you're with us, here's what we intend to do." So they and another interesting thing that the Hebrew word for the serpent or for the snake gets to be the same word that goes back to the story with Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's a midrash. I think it's a comment somewhere of that's why this was chosen as a symbol to remind the people how easy it is to go astray, and how quickly they can be banished or punished.
Ken, did you want to respond?
No, I sense that, or I get that from the reading of that the intro, starting with line 1 of chapter 21 as well. And look, at the end of the day, that belief that God is with the Israelites, come thick and thin, is kind of a universal understanding, even with the times of great suffering, such as when the king of Arad attacked, evidently to current times of October 7 to 80 years ago, Holocaust. But somehow the people survived and in many ways thrived.
It's interesting. So what? Finish your thought, Kent. I'm sorry.
Well, it gives, for me, this is perhaps a keystone of my understanding of my relationship as a Jew to my God. Is that kind of this understanding, as best I could to obey the tenets as prescribed, and in response, if not me, then my people, my brothers and sisters, will not just survive but thrive.
Okay. Rabbi, did you want to add something?
No, not necessarily yet.
Because I had some
I reserve the right to comment further.
Okay. See, I had a different take on that, on the story with the serpents. And because I was and a staff, I was reminded of the Passover story.
With the
Okay.
of the sign to Pharaoh, you mean?
The signs to Pharaoh. That's right. This is the first sign to Pharaoh. Oh, does anybody remember what happens with that?
Didn't it, was it with Pharaoh had his magicians, I'll call it, and they
Yeah,
had
that's
staffs
fine.
and they supposedly turned to snakes. And what did not Moses have a staff and his he turned into a snake, but he kind of ate the other snakes. Am I right?
Right.
Do I recall it correctly?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So
Yeah.
that's the story I was reminded of. And maybe the staff, this symbol on a staff is to remind us of uh, hope right from the very start, that even though you're going to have to fight for what you believe to be true, what are your virtues, what you hold as true. You have to, uh, and you can't take anything for granted. These give you hope for a future, and if you look towards the future, you will not take the adversity as seriously because you know you're going to have something better. I don't know, but Rabbi, why don't
Yeah,
you?
I quickly found the reference that I was trying to remember. I knew it wasn't Midrash. It's Zohar. It's
Okay,
Zohar that that the notion is that looking at the bronze serpent reminded the people of the serpent who tempted Eve or caused
right,
Eve and Adam
right.
to sin,
That's another interpretation.
um,
Yes.
and recognizing that sometimes a punishment is deserved. Okay,
Hmm.
and that recognizing that you've made a mistake, you've done something wrong, is the first step towards teshuva. But the underlying thing, and I think this is what some of what Kent was saying, the underlying notion is that God is not deserting you.
Right.
So that's why the symbol of the serpent still can be representative of God's presence, but there's a life lesson that goes along with it.
Okay.
And that's Zohar. Now I
I
found
get
it
it.
quickly. Okay.
Yeah. That happens when two fellas meet on their way, sometimes on a bridge, sometimes on a path. And the discussion, it comes from there. So there are different possible ways of looking at this. And but thank you, Kent, for reminding us, and thank you, Rabbi, for chiming in. We could have used you a couple of weeks ago too.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Sorry. I was running a service for 112 retired Reform rabbis.
Oh, oi.
Oy is right. Oy is right.
Uh, any other comments here? So, here they recognize the Israelites definitely are slow to learn. Every time they go from one situation to another, they make vows and break vows. They do things, and every time something bad befalls them, and still, as as the rabbi was saying, God is still with them and still with us. So, any other comments before we read on?
Well, Marty, I'm sorry that by the time that I was able to tune in, I was playing Zadie for a couple of minutes, and
That
we
takes
have we have we have
priority.
we have a visitor from Brooklyn. Um, the but I was interested in you said something about that we should explore the connection from this story into what's happening in Israel and the
Yeah.
modern world today. So
Yeah.
it's interesting in where whether it's Michael or whomever saw the connection and where that goes. And then I can add the information that I have, which may be a little more um, immediate than what some other people have heard. But let's go first, if you want.
Okay. Well, let me get it started and with a few words. And one of the issues that this has taught us, I think, is not to be complacent and be active in uh, in you don't of knowing that that what you do in life is centered around a faith that has existed for thousands of years while others have come and gone. And in the story sort of suggests that and I've done some extra reading because of where this story will lead into the story of Balaam. And it really struck a note with me that we're going through a very trying period, that we need to focus on what are the Jewish values, and let those values guide us to well, repair the damages that have been done, the horrible damages that have been done to the Jewish people again. And sometimes we have to, we will have to fight as we're learning, but I think we still have to have that God is with us as long as we, subscribe to the values that He gave us the prescription. We either take the medicine, if you will, or not. If we don't, we may not get through things. So anyway, that's what I'll just mention.
Marty,
Yeah,
may I share one last thing?
sure.
I have been giving it a lot of thought to the post October 7 situation, and then up to the current moment of uh, the truce that's supposed to go into effect at 8:30 kind of Israel time tomorrow. And when I look at this section, particularly again that first call the first paragraph of chapter 21,
Mm-hmm.
what I believe, how God responded to the Israelites being attacked, and then, he was there. They called out to him, and then the next thing you know, the Israelites took over their towns. The
Right.
word they used, prescribed towns. Okay, and that's a not a gentle process of doing that. That's war at its utmost. And when I think about that in relationship to nations and the responsibility of leadership of government is actually to care for its people in a way of a motherly love. Okay. You say, well, what does that in that first paragraph have to do with motherly love? Well, in the school I went to, any mother would do anything it could possibly do to defend and protect its children, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. And what got me started on this, and I won't go into the the actual story, but back when National Public Radio was more nuanced, if not objective in its reporting, there was a story about a man. He told the story of his mother, who he was a small boy, and he got separated from his mother. A sexual predator had gotten him. She came upon them just before he was to do some really horrible things. And I said I wasn't going to say it, but she literally beat him to death, the man, kicked his head in. And I thought about it, and this man was telling that story. She didn't go to jail. That was her son. And he was to be protected at any and all cost. And the evil was to be purged. And that's what I read in that first paragraph. That's what I see Israel being faced with today. And not just today. I mean, since before its independence in 48. So that's how I read it. But that story through NPR gave me pause to think of how God looks at Israelites, as the Hebrews, as with a motherly love. So just, you probably won't find that in any Zohar, Talmud, Mishnah,
No,
but it's a Blumenthal
but it's Kent. It's Kent. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments? Yes, Rabbi.
I can kind of hear in one of my ears, I can kind of hear Don Burke, saying, talking about this. But in this particular case, not in others, but in this particular case, the Canaanites under King Arad, the punishment is not to be massacred.
Right.
Okay. The punishment is to be put into cherem, which we kind of would translate as excommunicated, as set aside. Definitely a punishment, but it's not capital punishment. It's not to be massacred. It's not to be destroyed. It's they get pushed out. They lose all rights to their property. So in other words, if in traditional Jewish law in halakha, if someone is like Spinoza, if someone is put into cherem and excommunicated for their words, for their deeds, whatever it might be, the community, through with the Beit Din, through the rabbinic court, now takes possession of Spinoza's property. It's not a death sentence. All right. So, also here, what the people are saying is that we're not going to kill all the Canaanites, but we're going to take over. We're going to occupy. If that's okay with you, Adonai, that's what we plan to do, and they are given permission to do so.
I just want to comment on that, and thank you, Rabbi, for sharing that. But
in this case, now in other cases, like I say, and Don Burke would be the first one to point it out. But in other cases, yes, they are told utterly wipe them out, but not here.
Well, okay, with the exception that I don't see how they could remove the inhabitants, inhabit their property and their land without having gone through that exercise of battling them and overcoming them. And
it doesn't say they can't battle them. It's that they can't. The difference in the command is not to utterly destroy them.
Well, it's funny you say that because I'm looking at the footnote in my Tanakh, which they have the word prescribed as literally, i.e., utterly destroy,
Oh, okay. Which
reserving no
commentary is
booty
that?
except what is deposited in the sanctuary.
Right, that's what I have in mind too.
Which commentary is that? See, and I would, I mean, I certainly respect the scholars and whatever, but I would disagree.
Okay,
I read it differently.
I got it. Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm what we call, my training is as a semantic differentialist. Okay.
Uh, whatever that means.
Well, it means that it's an entirely different verb here
Yeah,
than it is in other places. So if it's an entirely different verb, it doesn't mean that it's synonymous. It
Right,
means that there's some kind of and we're only guessing at what the difference was
right,
from
right,
3,600 years ago.
right.
right.
Any other comments? Okay. So, Michael, would you care to read? Starting with verse 10, and why don't you read 10 through 20, the end of 20.
The Israelites marched on to and camped at Oboth. They set out from Oboth and camped at Ebrium in the wilderness bordering on Moab to the east. From there, they set out and camped at the Wadi Zered. From there, they set out and camped beyond the Arnon, that is in the wilderness that extends from the territory of the Amorites. For the Arnon and the boundary of Moab, between Moab and Amorites. Therefore, the book of the wars of the Lord spoke of Wahab in Serbath and the Wadis, Amnon with its territory, tributary
Tributary waters.
Wadis, stretched along the settled country of Ar, hugging the territory of Moab. And then there the beard, which is the well where the Lord said to Moses, assemble the people that I may give them water. Then Israel sang this song. Spring up, O well, sing it. The well which the chieftains dug, which the nobles of the people started with the maces and their own staffs. And Midbar to Manath, and the Manath to Nebalil, and from the Nehalel to Bamoth. I'm having a lot of trouble with these names, but
Okay.
and from Bamoth to the valley that is in the country of Moab, at the peak of Pisgah, overlooking the wasteland.
Okay.
Marty,
Yes.
if anyone has been to Petra in Jordan, okay, whether you crossed by from Israel into Aqaba, or and then went north, or if you got off of a cruise ship or whatever, or went north, you pass, and the tour guides usually point out where the Wadi Arnon is. That was the southern border. Wadi Arnon was the southern border of Moab, and it's right near Petra.
Okay. Yeah, we're marching through the Transjordan right now.
Uh-huh.
That's where most of this is going to take place.
Until Joshua.
That's right. So, any other comments? It so why would you we've had this discussion in the past. Why are you mentioning all of these places? Why would somebody want to mention all of these places? We've had the same discussion when Abraham is walking around, Canaan, scouting it out. We had the same discussion as to all the names of places. Sometimes we run into the names of people, one right after the other. Why would somebody be sure to mention all of these things? And they're not going into the details. Maybe there were more details in the remote past, but sometimes it's just to remind us of these places. Any ideas? Why would you do that?
So the story would be intact. We get all the details of keeping the story intact without leaving any parts out, and just so it we have the history, the historical facts of everything.
Okay. So we're doing the walkabout that Abraham did of Canaan. The Israelites are now doing it in the opposite direction. Yes, go ahead, Marianne.
Yeah, what I'm seeing in this is there's a lot of stopping and going on their path to God, on their wanting to do what they're supposed to be doing. That you travel, then you stop, or you get refreshed, or what's ever happening in that rest period, and then you travel some more. Uh, I've never been there, but this certainly seems like it was a very long walk.
Yes.
And that they stopped to rest, to re-energize, to reorganize their thinking. That's just what I see in all of this traveling here.
Okay. Now, in this version of that I have of Torah, this is really a poem that is being recited or sung. Okay, as a song. And so because there are forward slash marks throughout, we ran into this before crossing the Red Sea, the Sea of Reeds, I should say. And we see the same layout of the hash marks in the reading, but that doesn't show up in Torah, I don't think.
No, this one does not.
Right. Yes, Marcia.
Is this because there's telling us about what's happening in all those years to make it logical what those people were going to? Because they were waiting for them to all die and new ones to come.
Mhm. I'm going to go out on a limb, as I frequently do, and I wanted to mention that maybe there were many stories about these specific locations that are now have been lost. Maybe some of them we do know from archaeologic digs and things like that, but maybe, but by putting them down, uh, they're not forgotten. Cities can come and go through time, and they can seem to be that they're around for a long period of time, but they're not in the scheme of things. And after thousands of years, we're reading this and we're saying, well, what happened in these cities? What was the battle about and like that? There may have been something more written down, but we just don't have that any access to it. And I just wanted to mention that part because that's we came across that in the book of Genesis. We've come across it in the book of Exodus and like that. And when we see a whole series of names and places, yeah, hey, maybe I'd want to do a trip to go to some of these places. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, I agree completely. It's not going out on a limb. I think that's it's exactly right. As is the people in the first generation or two or three or four who were listening, and this was all in oral tradition, don't forget,
Mm-hmm.
who were listening to the storytellers as they related this. Oh yeah, I remember hearing about that place. I remember hearing, my parents told me about that place. My grandparents told me about that place, and that because it's a tighter community that that certainly this was their frame of reference. It's like if and we would do the same thing today. We would have nicknames for some of the places. Not even the full name of the place. Oh, we're going to go to such and such a corner, in the neighborhood, and everybody knows what you're talking about. Or we're going to go to such and such a restaurant, or we're going to go to such and such a particular park. In their mind, it was such and such an oasis, or such and such a caravan marketplace that was open on Mondays and Thursdays, and that everybody knew what they were talking about. Thanks to Professor Nelson Glick of beloved memory, we now have all the maps, and we can identify what all these places were.
And what I find interesting is that you mentioned oases. Some of these areas are in the middle of a desert,
Mm-hmm.
and wells also had to be dug. Okay. Okay, guys. Now a test. Who is the great well digger in the book of Genesis?
Think Beersheba.
Mhm.
7 wells.
Is that Jacob?
Abraham? Who's dug the wells?
Not much is said about this guy.
Right. Who's in between?
Who's in between?
Jacob.
There's a lot, and I want to give him some credit for things, Isaac. Yeah, Abraham, Isaac, and remember the stories of all the wells, and then the other people would come and try to destroy the wells that were dug, and then he goes on to build another one and so forth, until finally he was able to get one well and is not only successful, but all the sheep can flourish. So it's an interesting thing. So this whole region, towns were built where there were wells. By the way, in the Old West in the United States, it's the same story.
And if I may continue, it's not only where the place was, it's what happened there.
That's right.
American citizens, all we have to say is Gettysburg.
The whole thing.
Excuse me.
It's okay.
Do you want to say hi to my friends?
Bring her in. Sure, she can say hi.
No. Do you want to say hi to all my friends?
Marty,
Yes,
I have to leave now.
Okay,
I
bye. Have a good
apologize,
I
time.
understand.
but Shabbat Shalom to everybody.
Shabbat Shalom,
And have a good
Michael.
Shabbos. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So the places and names. We remember in the book of Genesis that they have a whole series of names for generations and like that. But the stories with each one of those names are not available. And that it's a shame because you would have much, much more information about the progression before we get into the stories about Laban and everyone and getting everything started.
Right.
But that's why Torah is set up this way. There's a heritage. There's a heritage here, and of names and places in time and space that, hey, this adds validity to the story, in a way. And by the way, if you were writing a novel, you would want to do something of a similar fashion.
My one of my teachers of Bible at the seminary, Hanan Brichto, who was a cynic of the highest order. He said he believed strongly in a scholarly way that there were other documents and
Yes.
other stories that had much more complete information about a lot of these places. But when the Masoretes finally did the editing, they said, that's not an important story. We'll leave that out for one reason or another. He said, I wish we had all those documents today. There could be, we might see insights into them that they didn't see, that long ago.
That's right.
But just like, you mentioned the little song that's here, verses 17 and 18. There is a collection, um, um, and I'm blanking on the name. There is a collection of songs that the Apocrypha, the hidden books, assume were all in the original Torah. I forget the name. I forget the name of the collection. But there is a book, and that collection is. Sorry for the noise in the background.
Don't worry about it.
Okay,
Hey,
Chloe has to decide, does she want to go to the garden, to the park, or not? So
okay. But the kids, in my mind, I always enjoy the sound of kids when, to be heard. The world around them are all mountains. It's a world of giants.
right.
So they have to yell more.
Yep.
But
And
hey, wait a
she's
minute.
used to Brooklyn skyscrapers.
There
So
you go.
what? Everything's on one floor? What do you mean? I'm used to getting in an elevator and going up
That's
to the
right.
46th floor to get to my house.
Go outside and say that you have a magical elevator. Push the doorbell and you will go immediately to the floor. And open it as the door opens.
Magic, right?
Oh boy. I love kids. I love kids. Anyway, so this may be why it's here. And I thought it would be interesting to just do a little side discussion on that. So if I want to, okay, who would care to read right now? I'm losing my readers.
I'll
Okay,
read.
and
Tell me
why
where to
not-
begin, please.
Okay, verses 31
21.
to the end.
21,
No.
right?
Oh, 21, I'm sorry.
No, we haven't read.
Yes, you're right. You're right. So
We
21.
go back up to 9. Hold on a second. Let me make sure I'm on the right page. Oh, forgive me. I had read ahead.
Yes, me too. And that's okay.
Okay. 21.
So
Line
21,
21.
why don't
Okay.
you read from 21 through the end of 30?
Okay. Which would include what the bard recited. All right.
Yes.
Israel now sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, "Let me pass through your country. We will not turn off into fields or vineyards, and we will not drink water from wells. We will follow the king's highway until we have crossed your territory." But Sihon would not let Israel pass through his territory. Sihon gathered all his people and went out against Israel in the wilderness. He came to Jahaz and engaged Israel in battle. But Israel put them to the sword and took possession of their land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, as far as Az of the Ammonites, for Azi marked the boundary of the Ammonites. Israel took all those towns, and Israel settled in all the towns of the Amorites, in Heshbon and in all its dependencies. Now, Heshbon was a city of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who had fought against a former king of Moab and taken all his land from him as far as the Arnon. Therefore, the bards would recite, "Come to Heshbon, firmly built, and well founded is Sihon's city. For fire went forth from Heshbon, flame from Sihon's city, consuming Ar of Moab, the lords of Bamath by Arnon. Woe to you, O Moab! You are undone, O people of Shamash. His sons are rendered fugitive, and his daughters captive by an Amorite king, Sihon. Yet we have cast them down utterly." Heshbon, along with Dibon, we have wrought desolation at Nopah, which is hard by Medeba. I'll finish. So Israel occupied the land of the Amorites. Then Moses sent to spy out Jazer, and they captured its dependencies and dispossessed the Amorites who were there.
Okay. Any questions? We sort of covered some of this in our discussion.
Mhm.
Does anyone want to just make mention of Moab? Suzanne, you've
I've been quiet.
mentioned you like Moab.
I like Moab. Not really.
Okay.
Because Moab was founded by an incestuous relationship with Lot and I forget which daughter. But the Moabites came from that child.
Okay.
And the other daughter also had a child. And I forget which tribe they formed. Yeah, it just escapes me at the moment.
Okay. Who else is a Moabite in Jewish history?
Oh, you're talking about Ruth.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. So now you're getting some extra bits of information about Ruth too. And
And Moab is where Moses is buried.
Yeah, I'm not sure where Moses is buried.
Well, no one is sure
no one
exactly,
knows, but he
but it's in
goes
the
into that region.
it's in
Oh,
the mountains of
region.
Moab.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a very by the way, think of some of the scenes in the movies where people just, the image fades out in the distance, as they ride off into the sunset, that occurs in the mountains of Moab with the story of Moses. Nobody
Right.
knows where he's buried to this day. And
Well,
yeah.
with two things. One, I don't know if you read this again a couple of weeks ago. Why is this even there? That the bards of the other, sang this on why was that even included? It doesn't have quite the impact of the Ten Commandments,
Well, we didn't
but
get to this yet.
yeah, okay, all right.
This is the first today.
And just where is Moab? And again, I'll make the reference for those who have been to Israel. And if you stand on Masada
Right.
and look east,
Right. Across the,
okay, and like we used to
across
take
the
groups and
Dead
kids,
Sea.
especially up to the top of Masada, in time to watch the sunrise.
Right.
Those are the mountains of Moab. Right. And then just about 15, 18 miles north of there is where the assumption is that that's where Moses is buried.
For those of you who have some of the maps from Plout on page 1165, you'll see where everything is laid out on a nice map for what the rabbi is describing. And
Hey, Marty, before you
yes.
continue, I missed that. What was the relationship with Ruth? Ruth?
Ruth is a Moabite.
Ruth is a Moabitess.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
So it's just of interest, but it gives you a rough idea where all these stories are taking place. Yes, go ahead, Suzanne.
Actually, we can expand on Ruth a little bit. I think it was the prophet Nathan. I think he was a Moabite, and he wanted to convert to Judaism, and he was told no because somewhere in scripture there it said no Moabite can never become a Jew, or I forget what the wording is, but he was prohibited from doing it. And he said to David, King David, well, wasn't your grandmother a Moabite? So David
Mm-hmm.
took
Okay.
the Unum and Thummim, I think I'm saying that correctly, to ask God about it. And God's response, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, was that the no Moabite thing referred to men, because men do wars and things like that, but the women and children belong to God. So there was no issue then with Ruth marrying Boaz and coming into the fold.
Thank you.
I think that's right, but it doesn't lessen in any way. It doesn't lessen Nathan's message to David.
No.
Not at all. Right.
In fact, that kind of gives me I don't know what word I want to use, hope or comfort, because the Jewish people are God's chosen, but there's still room for the Gentiles to
Validation.
participate.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the word. Thank you.
Thank you for all that. I appreciate that. Well, why don't we go from 31 through the end of 35.
Read that if you like.
Thank you.
Okay. Then thus Israel dwelt in the land of the Amorites. And Moses sent to spy out Jazer, or Jazar, and they took the towns thereof, and they drove out the Amorites that were there. And they turned and went out by the way of Bashan. And Og, the king of Bashan, went out against them. He had all his people to battle at Edrei. And the Lord said unto Moses, fear him not, for I have delivered him to thy hand, and all his people and his land. And thou shalt not do to him as thou didst do unto Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. So they smote him, and his sons and all his people, until there was none left of him remaining, and they possessed his land.
Okay. Do you want to just finish this? Yeah, we can end it here at this point.
Hmm.
And any other discussion?
Well, again, just for the frame of reference on the map,
Hmm.
um, Bashan, but Bashan is what we would loosely call today the Golan Heights.
Hmm. Ah,
Okay, so that's north. That's further north from Moab. Okay,
right. And then they come
extending
down.
from Mount Hermon and in that area, and then in later literature and even into the Psalms, Sihon and Og, the two kings, are lumped together.
Right.
So right, because the two battles of conquest under Moses's leadership, those are referred to here as opposed to the conquest of the promised land that's under Joshua's leadership.
Got it. Now I have a question uh, about just about the geology a little bit. I know in during my lifetime, the Dead Sea has shrunk. Uh, and has it always been that way, going way back, that was it much larger, much larger at one time? Does it, in other words, did they have to, were the Israelites just walking around the Dead Sea rather than going through territory?
No, I
I
think
just don't know.
I don't know either. I think the assumption is that yes, it was larger, and going back thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, but that the shrinkage
Right,
is just has been a continual
right,
thing. It's just we're much more aware of it right now because we have the um, uh, we have the spas and the resorts and the
sure,
and the roads that now can get closer or to the actual to the water.
right. I think of the Great Lake in Utah.
Is
Uh,
that receding also?
yeah, it's
Mhm.
shrinking, and they say that
Whereas the freshwater lakes, like the Great Lakes, are not, or
right,
at least not as significantly.
right, right. It's because and so I have to ask you about the different wadis. Some were full of, some carried water, some were dry. And even today. So are the are these wadis that they're talking, or are they rivers?
Yes,
Both. Okay.
the Hebrew word is the same.
Okay.
It
Oh,
is
okay.
nachal. So it's the same whether it's a dry riverbed or whether it's a flowing riverbed.
We do the
The
same
Hebrew
thing
is the
here
same.
with word river.
Yeah, right. But
Okay.
it leads into there's a beautiful midrash of what's the difference between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. Okay. The Sea of Galilee, of course, the Jordan River,
Right.
and its three tributaries
Right.
all flows into the Sea of Galilee, continually renewing it, and
Right.
then the Jordan River continues to flow out of it south.
Right.
But when the water gets to the Dead Sea coming from the Jordan River or from the wadis or whatever, the Dead Sea holds on to the water.
Right.
It doesn't flow out of it. Okay.
Right.
So which is
Basic.
the ideal characteristic
Right.
of, that's why one is called the living waters and the other is the Dead Sea,
Right.
that only takes and doesn't give out.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Any other discussion? So, the next chapter is a little interesting. If we were reading verse 1, okay, if we read 22:1, if somebody would care to read that. Go ahead, David. Just verse 1.
Okay. And the children of Israel journeyed and pitched into the plains of Moab beyond at Jericho.
David, it broke up. You're running into some difficulty with a lot of interference.
Yeah, let me try that again. And the children of Israel journeyed and pitched in the plains of Moab beyond the Jordan at Jericho.
Okay. So now we think the story is coming to an end. Okay. We've gone around the Dead Sea, and now we're coming back into, I guess, what today is going to be, as the rabbi mentioned, Golan Heights, and possibly even a little further around. I don't know if we touch on a bit of Lebanon here in today's, map. But from the standpoint of things, you would think that would be we're coming to a close. We're coming to a close. Well, not so fast. Not so fast. Because now we get into the story of Balaam. And there's always a reason why a separate story is inserted. We ran into this in the book of Genesis, the story of Tamar. Okay, it's in and it suddenly shows up out of nowhere. About how what should be done, using the word honor. How do you save your own honor, and how do you save the honor of Tamar? And it is, I think, a very interesting. So that was in that one. Now we have another story. It just comes right in the middle of, hey, it's interrupting our story here. I want to get on with where people are going, what they're doing. In one way, they said, okay, the story's over. We just got into Canaan, and we're now at the door of Jericho. That's it. But wait a minute, there's more to tell about the journey. And the story that we're going to be discussing, apparently, this story shows up not only in the Torah, but in Islamic text, and also in other groups of people from around the area. So they feel that this story may have been true in some ways. It may have been a story that was embellished. We're not sure, but it is a very profound story. Okay, and there's something hidden in the midst of it that we will, if the rabbi, I know we won't get to this point this week, but if the rabbi will lead us in song, okay, when we get to that phrase, and maybe we'll read one of the translations of the song, so that we, by the way, we sing that song every week.
Well, we sing it every week.
Yes,
Those who go to the synagogue every morning
we'll do it
every morning.
That's right. That's right. As a matter of fact, some people will sing it on entering the synagogue or temple as a routine.
I'll just throw it out now. I'll remind everybody when we do it. So if you didn't know, Marty's talking about Matovu. Okay,
Right.
that's what he's talking about. But what a lot of people don't know is that the words of the first verse of Matovu, because that's one of the first songs that or first prayers that is recited together in the
Yeah.
daily worship. Okay, and you, the first verse of Matovu has 10 words. Right? And so in traditional congregations, they use that to say whether or not they've got a minyan and can continue with the service. Okay. So everybody says matovu, that first phrase, and then vani,
Right.
oh,
Right.
we got, there's the first five. Oh, wait, we're only at eight. We
That's
need, and
right.
sometimes they don't refer to the people as number 9 and number 10. They refer to them by the words of the verse.
Right.
Who's gonna be our Yiratecha? Who's gonna be things like that?
Right.
Huh.
Very interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. So we're not going to, I don't know if we'll get
I
to
doubt
that
it.
point because it's a very complicated story. Uh, it, so actually what we're going to do is the rabbi mentioned Zohar. We're going to go through this and we'll read it for face value and it's fine. But then there are multiple levels on this story. So it's a very important one. So with that in mind, we are now in Numbers 22, verse 2. So I see some of my readers are not here. So Kent Suzanne. Suzanne, you have your hand up. Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Suzanne. Go.
Okay. And Balak the son of Zippor saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was sore afraid of the people because they were many, and Moab was distressed because of the children of Israel. And Moab said to the elders of Midian, now shall this company lick up all that are about us, as the ox licketh up the grass of the field. And Balak, the son of Zippor, was king of the Moabites at that time. He sent messengers, therefore, unto Balaam, the son of Beor, to Pethor, which is by the river of the land of the children of his people, to call him, saying, behold, there is a people come out of Egypt. Behold, they cover the face of the earth, and they abide over against me. Come now, therefore, I pray thee, curse me this people, for they are too mighty for me. Peradventure I shall prevail, that we may smite them, and that I may drive them out of the land. For I want that he whom thou blessest is blessed, and he whom thou cursest is cursed.
Let's stop there. Okay. So any comments about this
Is this
so far?
classic anti-Semitism?
Well, it sure could be looked at that way.
It's a start, yeah, for sure.
Any other ideas?
Well, we're going to find out that this.
No, no
All right,
killer.
all right. I'll zip it.
Yeah, okay. So just let's talk about Balak here. We're setting a stage. Are we getting any clues as to what kind of person he is?
I think he's wishy-washy.
All right. Why?
Well, because he wants Balaam to fight his fight, you know,
Okay.
and yeah, he wants Balaam to curse the Israelites. And that's not even a fight. That's I don't know what you call that. That's like trying to use witchcraft or something.
Okay.
It's not what a true leader would do. A true leader would face the problem himself. Maybe get some advisors on how to approach a battle or something like that, but wouldn't pay for someone to curse someone and have no idea if that curse is even going to work.
That's very true. But apparently this, as we will say, Balaam is, or Balaam, however we're going to pronounce his name, he probably had a track record of prophesizing, and things came true.
Yeah, yeah, he did, and he did it for money, which
Yes, that's
that
but I,
knocks my socks off.
yeah,
picking up on what Suzanne is saying,
yeah.
why didn't Balak pay Bilam to bless his own people
Oh, that's a good.
rather than turn the fear, the resentment, the hatred, whatever it is of the Israel, rather than cursing, putting a curse on them. Hey, if you're so powerful, bless my people, give us prosperity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the better leader.
Yes,
Yeah, that's an excellent idea. I never thought of
right.
that.
Yeah. Hey,
I
it
guess that's
looks
why I'm
like
not a rabbi.
Balak wasn't very big on immigrants, you know,
Right, right.
and you know, he saw them as a threat to the way of life. They were pass through. They were going to take their jobs. They were going to eat their food, um, lick their grass clean. Um, yeah, and
Well, this is make Midian great again,
Yeah.
yes,
right?
yes, more or less,
The guy
more or
wears a
less. I
red
mean, I
hat.
don't.
Okay.
Okay, guys, now come
No,
on.
but look, if you put it in contemporary terms, he's just
Yes,
that's how he's viewing they're outsiders. They're absolutely different.
And it's the
It's
threat
the
to
other.
threat to not only threat to his nation, but to his own reign.
Absolutely. They
that's
are the
that's the
other.
key.
Yeah.
That I think is an important aspect of this,
Mhm.
because it remember, this is not so much a fight between God, between Moses and the Israelites and all of these people. It's in a way, it's a series of battles of out of the Jewish God, or the Israelites' God at that time, and all the other peoples around. They had idol gods that were idols. And so we're still doing the same type of battle that we started off with.
Mhm.
Yes, Rabbi, you wanted to say
Well,
something.
so Balak saw or heard all that Israel had done to
Right,
to his neighbors. Okay,
right.
but did Balak know about the whole story? Did he know that Israel had initially said, "Let us just pass through"? Okay, we're not interested in conquest
Right.
of this area. We're intending to go over the Jordan. All right. So there's part of that also. You hear and you see what you want to hear, and selective reading of the stories.
Mhm.
So he could have said, okay, protect to Bilam or whatever. Like I say, put this protective umbrella over my people. Let the Israelites just go through, and everybody will be okay.
Okay. Those are good, very good points.
Mhm.
Any comments? Okay. There's something that about this. We had a brief discussion about this in the book of Genesis, about being careful what you say. I'm reminded of Laban saying, somebody stole my idols. And,
Mhm.
right, and
Well, Rachel
Jacob
stealing.
says, what does what does he say? What does Jacob say? It's no different. It's a very similar type of thing. So people are still believing this 400 or 500 years later. Okay, the same thing, that what you say can come to fruition. What happens to Rebecca?
Are you asking?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, Rachel died because,
Rachel, right, right. I get the two mixed up. Go ahead.
yeah, but well, Rachel died. She was the one that stole the idols, and Jacob said that
Right.
whoever stole the idols would be put to death. Well, she couldn't die right then because she was pregnant. Um, so after she delivered, was it Joseph?
Joseph, right?
Yeah,
Um, then she died.
No,
that's right. In
No,
childbirth.
wouldn't it have
Benjamin,
been Benjamin? Yeah,
Benjamin,
because
Benjamin.
right? Yeah.
So so you got to be careful what you say. And if you and it's interesting. Uh, I think that it's a good, whom you bless is indeed blessed, and who you curse is indeed cursed. I'm just paraphrasing. It's the end of verse 6. And so you want to be, careful. Um, we sometimes even use it, take God's name in vain. And we'll say phrases that, you know, and should we be careful here? What we say? We shouldn't be maybe so, think that we have the freedom to say whatever we want to say. Yes, Suzanne.
well, and this is coming into the Abrahamic covenant.
Mm-hmm.
God promised that whoever
Mm-hmm.
blesses Abraham and his seed, his descendants, would be blessed, and whoever curses them would be cursed. So here,
In those specific words,
yeah,
right?
yes, here's
Mhm.
this king trying to curse the Israelites, and so that's going to come back on him.
Sure. You're sort of like getting a clue. You're sort of
Right.
getting a
And
clue.
God will uphold his covenant.
Okay. And it's long term.
Yes.
Okay. So now here's something. When you make a vow, is that forever? In Torah. In Torah.
I think God looks at it that way.
It appears that way.
Mhm.
Unless there is an endpoint in the vow itself.
Correct. Correct. maybe that's why people want to put that in to say there is a, it's not going to affect me years from now, and I've forgotten what I said years ago.
That there is a difference in the in the in the terminology and in the halakha
Right,
between an oath and a vow.
right,
Between swearing an oath and making
right.
a vow. Right.
We're going to have that discussion when we go through the Nazirs,
Mm-hmm.
and we also on Yom Kippur
Yeah. Well, we
uh,
already had the
with
Nazir,
Kol
didn't we?
Nidre, right?
Yeah, we went back. Right.
That's right. We've discussed that multiple times, but we'll come back to that. Any other things you want to say about Balaam?
I would just point out for a second that in some of the commentary, yes, they acknowledge that there's a strong, serious theme here, but there's also commentary that just takes this as comic relief. We've
Yes,
we've had a lot of real heavy stuff, and it's time for a break. Okay, it's time to bring Eddie Murphy in as the talking donkey, and whatever, and da 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 da. And yes, it's just a different way of proving that God still cares for the Israelites.
that's right.
Well,
So,
what I find of interest is that Balaam, he has to have some understanding of God as in a manner that the Israelites understand God, because God came to him, spoke to him, and it's very few people that I am aware of that God actually addressed. So yeah, I wonder, well, what was the background on him that he would be receptive to a voice coming from somewhere, right? I don't know. I guess I'm asking a question. Can anybody shine some light on that for me?
Balak or Balaam,
but he
Balaam,
the
shifted it over
king or the
to
or the
to
wizard.
Balaam. Yes,
yeah. Uh,
Balaam.
Now, I don't think that there's an earlier reference. There's an earlier reference to Balak, but I don't think that there's
Right.
an earlier reference to Balaam.
He
Yeah.
probably seems to be, as Marty said, you didn't use this term, but he was like a shaman in a way. I mean,
Mhm.
he was called upon to do something, but he had, you know, but maybe I may have jumped ahead just a few lines because
It's okay. It's okay because in answer, some people have even gone as far as saying that Balaam was considered a prophet. Okay, but we're jumping to the end of the story. Okay, if you will, because Balaam does indeed, hear God, and he speaks the word of God. We'll come to that as we go through each one of these phases. But I think
okay.
that it's a very it's very important, and I think Suzanne mentioned that in a way, I want to get back to Balak, or Balak. I'm bad with the names. Uh, this is very a cowardly way of doing this. You wouldn't want this type of person a leader. He's not, he's positioning himself so he doesn't have to take blame for anything. All the blame is going to fall on Balak's shoulders. And he, if the prophecy doesn't work out, if the curse doesn't take place and come to fruition. And so again, we're seeing another battle between values that are going to take place. Because these few lines are painting somebody who he's not a nice guy. And you know, they don't have to, so you can say anything nasty about him now. And you know, if you're going to stage a play, okay, you can have him as the evil one, you know. But he's in essence, he's very cowardly. Yes, Rabbi. And I missed Marianne.
Marianne, you want to go first? It's
No,
okay.
no, go ahead, Rabbi.
You know, with Pharaoh in Egypt,
Mhm.
who says some of the same things.
Mhm.
The story, you know, eventually says that it's God who's hardening Pharaoh's heart.
Right.
Right? Here it's Balak who makes his own decisions.
Right.
And I'm not sure that I agree totally. Um, you know, and we said, is he an anti-Semite? You know, da, da, da. Is he just trying to protect his own throne? You know, whatever it is. But certainly that was the pattern. You know, who can I designate? Oh, there's this guy who has this fantastic, you know, international reputation of blessing and cursing, and he's got a 100% success rate. I looked him up on Yelp. You know, so we can afford it. Let's get him. Um, I don't know, but at
Okay,
least
it could be
Pharaoh's
that
off
way
the hook
too.
because in Pharaoh's case it says God hardened his heart some of the time. Sometimes he did it himself, but sometimes God says I hardened his heart.
But in a way, this is a similar. You're mentioning the same story, that if you truly want something to happen that's bad, the more you think about that, rather than as you get more information, changing your mind, whatever is out there to show you that you're
Oh, it
going
tends to
down the wrong
dominate.
path,
Sure, you know.
then you're doing that to yourself. You could say that I think again that's an excuse. God made me do it, as opposed to no, you decided to do it in spite of what you knew was right.
And you based your decision only on hearsay
That's right.
and
In
without
this
knowing
case, in
without
this
knowing
case,
the whole story, or
that's right.
however you want to phrase it.
That's right. So I think that there's a little bit there. Okay, I guess
Marty, Mary, we interrupted
oh,
Marianne.
Marianne, yes, thank you.
You know, I think kind of going along with what Suzanne said, politicians are politicians and they don't want to lose their power, they don't want to lose their control, and they certainly don't want to do their own dirty work. That he was set up big time, and that it's a lesson to us to really step back and look at the broader picture before we go one way or another way with something. That's just how I see it. I think that this is really saying, watch out for people in power, that they're going to use you and abuse you, and you must be very discerning on how you're going to follow or not follow what they say.
Mhm.
Good point. Good.
Yeah, good point.
You know, I see this as really very much the human experience more than historical, because people haven't changed much. And if they did it then, they'll do it now. That as individuals, we have to remain alert, and not in a hyper vigilant sense, but in a sense of alertness and awareness to what is happening around us before we just jump into the pool and then drown.
Okay. Excellent point. I think this is a good place to stop today. because then, and I want you to, we're going to, so next week we will start with verse 6. Okay? And the reason I'm stopping here is because I want you to do a counting exercise. Okay? It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, and then and I'll give you a clue for those of you who want to I'm going to be talking about the number 3. Okay. So we'll leave it at that. I know Michael's show is tomorrow, starting at 2. He wants people to get there before 2:00 so they can find a seat and everything.
Mhm.
And so I hope to see everyone there.
Very good.
Yes, Rabbi.
Marty, two things. One, and we apologize. I don't know if anyone was trying to tune in to the service, the Friday night service last night. We had a tech issue, and the live stream wasn't working. But one of the things that I was able to talk about last night is you might be aware that we have had this empty chair
Yes,
wrapped in a tallis
yes,
on our bima at the synagogue, and with the name of Sagi Dekel Ched.
yes.
Okay, all reports are that Sagi will be one of the first hostages released, maybe as early as tomorrow. Um, because of his American dual citizenship,
Right.
American and Israeli status. I was in touch with his father yesterday morning. You might remember his father is a professor of Eastern European history at Hebrew University, and we're not close friends, but we're acquaintances, and we go back many years. So I was in touch with Jonathan yesterday morning. He didn't know much more than that, other than the confirmation that Sagi's name was indeed published publicly. Um, they do not know if he will be released alive or dead. Sadly, at this
Mhm.
point, the hope certainly is that he's
Right.
alive. And we'll, as soon as we know one thing or another, because of the BSTC, because of our connection with Sagi, and it's a name that
Mhm.
people recognize, we'll send out information to the congregation as soon as we have it. So certainly, our what I was saying last night is whatever hopeful gesture and prayer that any of us have, whether it's crossing fingers, whether it's looking up in prayer or whatever, we certainly hope that tomorrow will bring good news and on lots of levels. And we'll send out a notice as soon as we can. The other thing is that the class beginning to explore the book of Joshua begins this Tuesday, 3 Tuesdays in a row from 10 to 11:15 in the morning on Zoom. Marianne asked me, Marianne, as long as you're here, what's your email? And I'll make sure that you get the Zoom link.
Thank you. I'll message you right now.
Okay, great. Okay, that would be fine. So we'll try that and begin that. Yes, Suzanne, did you want to join too?
Yes, please.
Are you on a link for on any of the lists for Torah study?
Um, I'm not sure because I think
Okay.
I used to be, but I think,
Okay, so what's the best email? I'll write it down.
oh, it's real easy. It's my name, Susan Curtin,
SU spelled SUZCUR
SUZANTIN
uh-huh
at hotmail.com.
at Hotmail. Okay. If you don't see it by the end of the day today, let somebody know one way or the other. We'll make sure that you get it.
Okay, and it starts this coming Tuesday?
Starts this coming, so the 21st, the 28th, and then whatever the first Tuesday in February is, I don't remember.
Okay.
Rabbi,
Hey,
will,
Rabbi,
will that be
just
recorded? Oh, okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Kent.
a
Go
real
ahead.
quick question, just Sagiv, how would you spell the last name?
It's hyphenated, Dekel hyphen CHEN.
Thank you.
And
Yeah,
yes, Marty, as far as I know, I think it will be recorded.
good, because then I'll be able to see it because I
Yeah.
have something scheduled at 2 o'clock also.
I
So,
just,
What
I
else
just
is new?
emailed you, Rabbi. I'm
What
not
else is-
emailed, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
chatted.
I got it. Thanks, Marianne.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
thank
Thanks,
you, and
Marty. Thanks,
everyone have
Rabbi.
a very peaceful weekend, what's left of it, and let's hope that we only get some good news from now on about
Right.
everything.
And that all the
Amen.
hostages are released,
Yes.
all of them.
Oh.
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. Everybody have a
Shabbat
good day.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom, everyone. Thanks.